Hey guys, Wildstyle here from Graffiti Bombing. So I've been working on a new menu system, which you can see on the TV in the player home. The idea is to make it much easier for managing game settings from like a main menu screen as opposed to the Actions Assistant where everything used to be. So you'll notice on the Actions Assistant now I've removed a lot of stuff, like the settings has gone. And everything has moved to the TV here. So this is the first version. I'm still working on it, but it's pretty close to kind of fully functional for what I need for right now. Obviously, I will be adding additional functionality and sections to this menu in the future. I've got lots of ideas of things I can add to this. So over time, there will be more sections added to this and more functionality and more features. At the moment, this is the landing screen. So there's an open world section, there's a creative section, which is new, and then there's settings. So that's all the settings that used to be on the Actions Assistant are now in there. So let's walk you through each section at a time and show you kind of how it works for now. If you look at the table in the player home, there's a new remote control. When you pick that up and you point it at the screen, it will activate a laser pointer. So let's look at the open world section first. If you use the trigger, it will take you into that section. So open world is basically the default game mode which we had from the first version of the game that I released. So as you went around the world and you picked up spray cans and you sprayed in the various paint zones, everything was saved to a default world instance, and so that works quite well. But the downside was that you couldn't manage that in the in the version that's released at the moment. There's no way of managing the world instances, and so if you spray in a paint zone, you can't remove that paint. Well, you can remove it, but not easily, right? You'd have to hack into that folder on Windows, find the files and delete the files, etc., right? So this new menu we're looking at here, so if I go to world instances, you can see that at the top here we've got a default world instance, which is also marked with a default label. And you can see that it's active. It's got this little green label on it that says it's active. So when you load up the game the first time, the default state of the game is going to be, let me delete this one. So when you load up the game for the first time and you came in here, you would just see this default world instance, right? And so as you then left the player home through the through the door and you went around the world spraying, everything would be getting saved into this world instance here, okay? And then if you then wanted to have another world instance because you wanted to keep, all that work that you'd done, you wanted to keep it, but you didn't want to go over something, you could either clone that instance, which would also clone all the paint as well. All the paint zones would also get cloned as well. So you might not want to do that, but there could be cases where you might want to do that as well. There might be some paint zones you want to keep and others you don't, etc. So you could clone that instance, or you could just add a new instance. So if we add a new instance, it will basically add a new blank world instance. It will then activate it, and you can see it's 0 megabytes. This is going to pick up how much disk space that world instance is using on your computer. So basically you can then you've got a new world instance. You can see it was created today, and it gives you the date and the time in detail down here. And then when you go out of the player home, you'll find that all the paint zones are then blank again, and you can start spraying again. If you want to switch back to a different paint instance, you can just activate it. So you'll get a confirmation, activate it, and it will switch back to the other one. Let's add another one. All of the list views here can be sorted. You'll notice that the world instance which is active at the top is a darker shade of black. for the background, and the active instance will always be at the top of the list. So even if you add lots of more instances, which you can now scroll up and down, you'll see that the active instance is always at the top. So if I activate the default one again, you can see it's always at the top. And then if I sort by date, for example, you can see from the timestamps here now we're filtering by date. So you can also filter this list as well. But when you filter it, you'll notice that the default instance is always at the top. So that's kind of how the world instances work. And then there's also home instances, which work exactly the same as the world instances, but the home instances are just for this player home area, because, you know, this player home area is kind of part of the open world, because you can open the door, you can leave, but at the same time, you know, if you practice in the you know, on the practice board over there, or if you graffiti the middle pillar here, there's going to be instances where you're probably going to want to change it, right? You might want to have different theme for your player home with different pieces of graffiti depending how you feel, right? And so you can do that from here. Exactly the same way you can add a new home instance, and you can manage and delete them exactly the same again. The active one again is at the top with, you know, marked in green. And so when you add a new instance, if I add a new instance now, it will get added to the top. You can see there's the date on it. It's been set active. You can see the date and time again, 0 megabytes, because we haven't done any painting, so it's going to be, there's nothing on disk at the moment. It gives you this default image on the left, just to say, you know, it's just so there is a image there. But what you can do is you can click on that and it will open up an image picker. And then this loads up all the graffiti bombing images that you've taken, you know, pictures that you've taken with your camera when you've been roaming around. They all go onto your camera and into your pictures folder on Windows. And then once you open up the image picker, that will load up all of the images that are in that folder. You can then scroll down, find the image that you want to use for that particular world instance and select it, and then it will get set like so. And if I reload, you can see that now we have a new instance with a new image at the top there. Okay, so that's how that works. If I go back to the main menu. So a new section that I'm adding to the game, I'm working on it still at the moment, is a creative mode. So we already have the open world mode we just discussed, and, you know, creative is going to be a new mode where you can start a single session for a single paint location, right? So as opposed to being able to roam around and paint in lots of different places, it's just a single area, like a single level, which will be loading up, you know, with a single paintable kind of area. And so if I go into the creative, you can see that we have a new session menu item and a load session. So obviously a new session is where you would pick the map that you wanted to play for a session. So you could select from the available maps, find the one that you wanted. You can see like a description of the map, some screenshot here, what the map looks like. Down here, there's some map details, kind of where it's located in the game world, size of the area. Is it a single player or a multiplayer map? More on that later. Multiplayer is not in the game yet, but it will be coming in the future. The performance requirements of that map. So this is a standard kind of map. So it doesn't have it has kind of no high-end performance requirements, but there might be, you know, depending on how big the map is that you've created and what you've put into it, the performance requirements could be low or they could be higher. And this is just a way of calling that out to people here. The map author, and when was the map last updated. Then you can pick the time of day that you want to play the map. So do you want to play, you know, in the middle of the day or at night, for example? And then the weather, what kind of weather do you want? You know, do you want it to be sunny or do you want it to be raining, etc.? And then once you're ready to go, you would click on start a session, confirm, and then basically you would, you know, load into that single level session. So that's how that would work. So at the moment, I'm just working on, well, the idea is that I'm going to take out some of the areas from the open world. I'm going to kind of duplicate and make some of those areas into like a single playable level. For example, the train wall that we're looking at here, if I closed off the ends of this area and made it self-contained, then this could become a single player level as well. Same with the warehouse interior. I could convert this to a single playable level where you can't leave through the door wouldn't open, the lift wouldn't be able to take you down, you'd just be stuck inside the warehouse area, but then you could have a paint session in here. So this is my idea for the first release, which I'm trying to get out, you know, in the next month or so. I'm going to convert some of these open world levels to, you know, a playable single kind of session level. So then once you play a session and you save a session, you can go back to this area for load session, and this will list all the sessions you have from before. And so it's just a basic, you know, game save load system. If you save it and you come here, it'll be showing up on the list. Again, you can sort this by name, ascending and descending, or by date. I might add some additional kind of filter options in the future. Again, this is a first version, so this is what it looks like now. It's not necessarily reflective of what it will look like 6 months from now. I'm gonna obviously get feedback from you guys, the community, and we can improve this over time. So obviously, if you click load on a session, you would confirm, do I want to load this session? Yes. Click confirm, and it would, you know, load, and off you go. You can delete a session. So if I delete a session, obviously it's also going to delete the image files, you know, that you've saved to disk. So before you delete, you need to be sure that's actually what you want to do. Otherwise, you're going to lose all your paint that you've been, you know, getting up in that area. And so, yep, that's kind of how this works. So that is creative sessions. So you can start a new session, you can load a session. More on this later. Okay. And then the last section of the menu is the settings. So this is pretty familiar probably to you if you played the game before. Basically, I took all the settings that were on the actions assistant and I've brought them into this menu system here and made them kind of a little bit more professional looking and easier to manage. So we've got, you know, game and player settings, locomotion settings, paint system, graphics and quality, and then a new one for audio and effects. So most of the settings are the same as before. There are some new ones which I will probably describe and, you know, call out at a later time. But in essence, you know, you can click on things and change them. So, you know, for example, what kind of grab style do I want to have? You know, the grab style can be configured based on the hardware. So today I'm on the HTC Vive. So if I pick up something with the HTC Vive, it stays grabbed even if I let go, right? But if I change that mode to hold to grab, and then I apply it, now I have to hold. If I let go of the grip, it drops the object. So that's just a simple example of, you know, how you can change a setting. I've added in a default settings basically for every screen. So if you want to go back to the defaults, you just confirm, and it's now changed back to the default hardware detect. So that's how that works. Pretty self-explanatory if you played any game before, but there you go. Locomotion, same thing. Only thing to call out here is that you can have multiple modes of locomotion at a time. So at the moment, I've got analog, and I've also got teleport enabled. So I can teleport, and I can also move on the left stick with analog. Depending on your preference, you can disable or enable which ones you want. At the minute, there's just 2 types, but I've got plans to add some more types later. I'm just keeping things simple for now. Turning style, snap or smooth, which is pretty familiar from before. And so, yeah, that's pretty much how the settings work. A few things to call out on the graphics and quality. I've now got these presets. So you can load a preset based on your rig, or you can have a custom preset, which is quite nice. If you just want to try some settings, you can go here and it will apply that setting throughout. The rest of it's pretty self-explanatory. I might add like some kind of help icon to some of these items. So then if you click on the help icon, it will maybe pop up and give you some more information about what that setting does. I think that could be a good idea for the future, because some people obviously are not technical. They might not understand what some of these things do. So having a little bit of help attached to some of these things could be useful. So yep, that's kind of how that works. You can also, if I go back to game and player, one other thing, you can still, when you start up the game for the first time, you go to the setup screen, right, on the entrance to the game, where you can also calibrate the player and that kind of thing. Before, that was the only place that you could actually calibrate the player. Now I've added it to the menu here as well. So once you're in the game, if you're in the player home, and if you're playing with some friends at your house, someone else puts on the headset, you can just come in here and you can recalibrate the height of the game for that person. So it makes it easier to recalibrate your height from inside the game. You don't have to restart everything again. So yeah, so that's kind of the new menu system. Also added audio and effects. There's a master volume for the sound, and there's also you can also set the maximum volume for the boombox, which is over there, and you can also set the maximum volume for the jukebox, because depending on your system, depending on the system you play the game on, sometimes some of these things can be a little bit loud. So it's quite nice having a little bit of control in here where you can set these things, kind of lower those default settings so you don't get deafened when you play something. So back to the main menu, and that was a very quick tour of the new menu system. I hope you like it. I think it's a huge improvement, and I think it's going to make it much easier to configure all your different save options and your settings, etc. And then, like I say, I've got other ideas of things I'm going to add to this in the future. So yeah, that's it for now. Cheers, guys.